Welcome to a world where the line between reality and nightmare blurs. In the next hour, prepare to be enthralled, disturbed, and utterly terrified as we present to you 13 tales that are not for the faint of heart. These stories are not mere fiction. They are the horrifying accounts of real people, real experiences, and real terrors. So, if you dare, turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare to journey into the darkest corners of the human experience. Brace yourself for 13 terrifying, true scary stories. The unsettling encounter with the mysterious woman left a lingering unease in my heart. Days turned into weeks, and yet I couldn't shake off the sense of foreboding that had settled over me like a shroud. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of the wind outside seemed to taunt me with whispers of something dark and sinister lurking in the shadows. It was during those long, solitary nights that I found myself drawn to the eerie allure of horror movies once more. Despite the chill that gripped my spine after each screening, I couldn't resist the tantalizing thrill they offered. It was as though the fear on the screen mirrored the fear I felt in my own life. One moonless night, as I lay in bed, the room steeped in an oppressive silence, the memories of that earlier encounter surged back to the forefront of my mind. The moonlight that had illuminated the hallway that night, casting eerie shadows, had etched the image of the woman into my memory. Her gaze, piercing and cold, remained seared into my soul. As if on cue, a shiver ran down my spine. The room felt colder, the air thick with a palpable tension. In the silence, I strained to hear anything out of the ordinary. It was then that I heard it, an indistinct, faint sound that seemed to emanate from somewhere within the house. My heart raced as I sat up in bed, straining to pinpoint the source of the noise. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping, like the whisper of ghostly fingers against a surface. Panic gnawed at me as I realized that the sounds were coming from the hallway outside my bedroom. Summoning every ounce of courage, I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and tiptoed toward the door. The narrow hallway stretched before me, shrouded in darkness. Moonlight filtered in through the bedroom window, casting eerie patterns on the floor. The tapping grew louder as I inched closer, and I could now discern a faint, haunting melody accompanying it. It was as though a spectral pianist played a melancholic tune on an invisible keyboard. My heart pounded in my chest as I traced the source of the sound to the bathroom door. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open, and the haunting melody reached a crescendo. What I saw left me breathless. A shadowy figure, bathed in an ethereal, otherworldly glow, hovered in the center of the bathroom. Her form was translucent, and her features were blurred, but there was no mistaking those cold, unfeeling eyes. She continued to tap her spectral fingers on an invisible piano, her gaze fixed on me. The melody filled the room, echoing through the small space. I couldn't move, couldn't tear my eyes away from the haunting sight. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the music ceased and the ghostly figure began to retreat. She moved backward, her eyes never leaving mine until she reached the bathroom window. With one final, chilling stare, she vanished into the night, leaving nothing but an eerie silence in her wake. I stumbled back, my legs giving way beneath me, and fell to the floor. My mind reeled, struggling to comprehend the supernatural encounter I had just witnessed. The realization washed over me like a tidal wave. This was no ordinary haunting. It was a message from the past, a connection to the enigmatic woman who had broken into my apartment. Days turned into weeks once more, and I became consumed by an insatiable need to uncover the truth. I delved into research, scouring old records and local archives for any trace of the woman who had haunted my nights. It was a daunting task, but I was driven by an unrelenting desire to unravel the mystery that had ensnared me. As I pieced together fragments of information, a chilling narrative began to emerge. The woman, it seemed, had once been deeply entwined with the tenant who lived upstairs. She had been his lover, but their relationship had spiraled into madness, marked by jealousy and obsession. Driven by a frenzied determination to possess him, she had embarked on a relentless quest to find him, her obsession blinding her to reality. In her fevered state, she had mistakenly broken into my apartment, a cruel twist of fate that had set the stage for our eerie encounter. The upstairs tenant, it turned out, had been living in constant fear of her, the echoes of their tumultuous past haunting him like a relentless specter. He had apologized to me that fateful day, but the true depths of his fear had remained concealed, buried beneath layers of secrecy. I couldn't help but wonder what the woman had intended that night when she had appeared in my hallway. Had she sought to harm the man she had once loved, or was her presence merely a desperate cry for attention, a manifestation of her twisted obsession? The answers eluded me like fragments of a jigsaw puzzle scattered in shadows. But one thing was clear: the bond between the woman and the tenant upstairs was a dark, tangled web, and I had unwittingly become entangled in its threads. As the days turned into months, the inexplicable occurrences in the house continued. The tapping of ghostly fingers on an invisible piano, the haunting melody that echoed through the corridors, they became a part of my nightly routine, a chilling reminder of the enigmatic woman who still roamed the halls of my mind. I couldn't escape the feeling that she was trying to communicate with me, that there was a message hidden within the eerie music she played. But deciphering that message remained a daunting task, a riddle wrapped in a mystery that seemed to defy all logic. And so, I continued my quest for answers, determined to unravel the truth behind the haunting of my one-bedroom apartment. Little did I know that the darkness that had settled over my life was far from finished with its malevolent secrets, and the next chapter of this chilling tale would plunge me deeper into the abyss of the unknown. Doubt had gnawed at me from the very beginning, an uneasy feeling that festered like a splinter in my mind. Kathy, my father's girlfriend, had entered our lives like a shadowy figure, her unsettling smile a mask for something far more sinister. The unease I felt had evolved into something more profound, a sense of foreboding that now clung to her like a shroud. As the days passed, my suspicions grew, fueled by a series of unsettling incidents. My siblings, Jake and Scotty, were unwittingly caught in the web of Kathy's deceit, and I had become their reluctant guardian, determined to uncover the truth and protect my family from whatever darkness she harbored. From the moment Kathy entered our lives, her presence had been a disconcerting enigma. Her smile, unnaturally wide and exaggerated, sent shivers down my spine as though it concealed a hidden malevolence. But it was not just her smile that troubled me, it was the shadows that danced behind her eyes, a darkness that I could not ignore. The first signs of trouble manifested when I discovered her in my father's closet, a place where he kept his safe and other valuables. Her explanation, delivered with that unsettling smile, had done little to assuage my growing unease. I brought my concerns to my father, but he brushed them aside, a veil of infatuation clouding his judgment. Days turned into weeks, and my unease deepened. I couldn't shake the feeling that Kathy was hiding something, that her actions were far from innocent. It was as though she reveled in her newfound authority within our home, and I found myself increasingly at odds with her. One day, as I returned from school, I saw her leaving my little brother Jake's room, a disconcerting smile playing on her lips. I questioned her presence, and she offered a flimsy excuse about opening a window. Her words didn't sit right with me, and after she left, I checked Jake's room to find the windows tightly shut. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the picture they painted was chilling. I confronted my father again, my words laden with frustration and fear. But he remained obstinate, urging me to be patient and give Kathy a chance. It was a response that only deepened my resolve to uncover the truth. As days turned into months, my determination to protect my family intensified. I had become a silent sentinel, vigilant and unyielding in the face of the growing darkness that Kathy represented. Then the night arrived that would change everything. My father, Jake, and I were all away from home, leaving Kathy alone with my 2-year-old brother, Scotty. An inexplicable impulse led me to return home unannounced, my footsteps falling as softly as shadows in the night. As I entered the house, a sense of unease washed over me. The air seemed charged with tension, and I couldn't ignore the faint cries that echoed through the stillness. Scotty's distress was palpable, and it sent shivers down my spine. Then I heard it, a shrill, angry scream, Kathy's voice raised in fury. My heart pounded as I rushed upstairs, my fear eclipsed by a determination to protect my brother. In the dim light, I saw her, her face contorted with anger, standing over Scotty's crib. Her cruel words cut through the air like a blade, and I could no longer deny the truth. 𝐒𝐊𝐑𝐀𝐍𝐆𝐒's unsettling smile had vanished, replaced by the raw ugliness of her true nature. I confronted her, my voice trembling with anger and fear, demanding that she leave my brother alone. For the first time, her response lacked that disconcerting smile. Instead, she looked at me with blank, vacant eyes, as though her mask had slipped. She retreated, leaving scAry's room and shutting the door behind her. I knew then that I had to act, that the darkness that had shrouded 𝐒𝐊𝐑𝐀𝐍𝐆𝐒 was no longer a mere suspicion but a chilling reality. I called my father immediately, the urgency in my voice unmistakable. I recounted the events of that night, the screams, the anger, the terror in scAry's cries. My father's voice wavered, his concern evident, but 𝐒𝐊𝐑𝐀𝐍𝐆𝐒's hold on him remained unbroken. That night, my father confronted 𝐒𝐊𝐑𝐀𝐍𝐆𝐒, their hushed conversation carrying through the thin walls of our home. I listened, my anxiety mounting with each passing moment, my fear for my family's safety driving me to the brink. The conversation ended, and I was left in the silence of my room, the darkness of the night pressing in on me. Hours passed, and I struggled to keep my eyes open, my senses on high alert. Then it happened. A soft creaking sound echoed through the quiet house, the unmistakable sound of footsteps outside my bedroom door. I watched in terror as the door slowly swung open, revealing a figure in the dim light. My heart raced as I sat up in bed, my gaze locked on the intruder. 𝐒𝐊𝐑𝐀𝐍𝐆𝐒's unnerving presence filled the room, and she quickly retreated, shutting the door behind her. Panic gripped me, my mind reeling with fear and confusion. I knew I had to act. I couldn't let her continue to infiltrate our lives, to endanger my family. With trembling hands, I rushed to my father's room and flung the door open, waking him with a frantic urgency. I told him what I had seen, my words pouring out in a torrent of fear and desperation. 𝐒𝐊𝐑𝐀𝐍𝐆𝐒 had been in my room, her silent intrusion a sinister omen. My father's response was a mix of disbelief and uncertainty, but he promised to address the situation. I returned to my room, my heart still racing, and I lay in the darkness, my senses on high alert. The night passed in a blur of anxiety and fear, and I remained haunted by the question that lingered in the air: why had 𝐒𝐊𝐑𝐀𝐍𝐆𝐒 been in my room? The following days were a tumultuous blur of emotions. My father confronted 𝐒𝐊𝐶 once more, their whispered conversation a desperate plea for answers. I couldn't know the outcome of their discussion, but I knew one thing for certain: my determination to protect my family had never been stronger. As the darkness continued to encroach upon our lives, I couldn't help but wonder what secrets 𝐒𝐊𝐶 harbored, what darkness lay hidden behind her unsettling smile. My family's well-being hung in the balance, and I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The chilling chapter of our lives had not yet reached its conclusion, and the shadows that loomed on the horizon held the promise of even greater secrets and terrors. The balmy nights of Fort Lauderdale, with their salty sea breeze and swaying palms, had always been my escape from the cold, unforgiving winters up north. My condo, perched on the second floor of a discreetly named building, offered a sanctuary where I could work remotely and embrace my inner beach bum. But paradise has its shadows, and one chilling night would forever stain the tranquility of my seaside haven. It was late January, the moon a pale sliver in the night sky, as I sat on my balcony, my feet dangling over the railing, engrossed in my laptop. The clock had struck past 10 o'clock, and the world below was shrouded in the stillness of the night. Then the tranquility was shattered by a voice that carried from the ground below, a voice that summoned me with a sense of urgency. The words "yo" and "hey you" pierced through the night, and I paused, my heart quickening with an uneasy anticipation. At first, I dared to assume that the shouts were meant for someone else, that the voice from below was addressing a passerby or a neighbor. But then those words became more specific, more direct, and my heart skipped a beat as I realized that the voice was calling up to me. Why? I wondered. Why would anyone be calling me from the darkness below? I gingerly set my laptop down on the chair, my curiosity mingling with a growing sense of unease. I leaned over the balcony's edge and peered downward to the source of the voice. There, in the dimly lit parking lot, stood a figure illuminated by the soft glow of the streetlights. He was looking up at me, his voice echoing through the night as he beckoned, "Hey, you up there?" I couldn't suppress the surge of anxiety that rippled through me. What did the stranger want? Why had he called me out of the darkness? I finally mustered the courage to respond, my voice edged with caution. "What's up?" I called down. He beckoned me to come down, his words laced with the promise to show me something cool. I squinted to get a better look at him, a guy with a backwards hat and a tank top. My initial assumption was that he was just some mischievous kid playing a prank, but something in his demeanor sent a chill down my spine. Despite the unease that gripped me, I decided to dismiss him. I settled back into my chair, convinced that it was a harmless prankster seeking attention. But then his laughter rang out through the night, a laughter that was anything but innocent. It was sinister, chilling, and he punctuated it with a menacing threat. "I'm going to come up there and skin you alive, you prick." My heart raced as I shot up from my chair. I couldn't ignore the malice in his voice or the unsettling smile that twisted his lips. This wasn't a prank. It was something far more sinister, far more dangerous. I opened my mouth to shout back at him, to confront him with anger and defiance. But inexplicably, the words never left my lips. Instead, I retreated indoors, shutting the sliding door behind me. I couldn't explain why, but a primal instinct warned me not to engage with the stranger any further. I chided myself, attributing his threats to the occasional drug-induced lunacy that sometimes lurked on Florida's streets. I tried to convince myself that it was just a random encounter with an unhinged individual, nothing more. The night, however, held further horrors in store. The silence of my condo was shattered by a series of deafening bangs, followed by a voice filled with obscenities and threats that reverberated through the walls. It was the same man, and he was at my door. I feared that he might break through at any moment, that my sanctuary was no longer safe. Panic clawed at me as I desperately yelled, "I'm calling the police." But my words had no effect. His relentless pounding continued, the sound of something sharp striking the door, carving and stabbing as though he sought to breach my defenses. Minutes stretched into eternity, my fear escalating with each deafening strike. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The silence that followed was heavy, oppressive, and I dared not move, lest it shatter the illusion of safety. I summoned the courage to look through the peephole, my breath caught in my throat. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. The door bore several stab marks, evidence of the man's relentless assault. I immediately called the police, my trembling voice recounting the night's chilling events. The officer on the other end assured me that help was on the way. As I waited in the silence, I couldn't help but wonder about the man who had terrorized me that night. Did he know me? Was he driven by madness or some twisted vendetta? The unanswered questions weighed heavily on my mind as the night wore on. When the police arrived, they took a report and examined the damage to the door. They assured me they would investigate the incident, but cautioned that it might be challenging to identify the perpetrator. That night, I prayed that no harm had come to anyone in the vicinity. I had narrowly escaped a terrifying ordeal, one that had shaken the foundation of my sanctuary by the sea. The scars on my door would serve as a haunting reminder that danger could lurk even in the most idyllic of places. As I lay in bed that night, the shadows of Fort Lauderdale whispered their secrets, and I knew that my paradise had forever changed. The question that echoed in my mind was simple yet laden with uncertainty. Why had that man targeted me, and what darkness had driven him to my door? The night had fallen, casting a shroud of darkness over the small, dingy jail cell. I sat on the uncomfortable wooden bar, my hands trembling slightly as I recalled the events that had led me to this grim place. Beside me, my cellmate, a rugged man with face tattoos and a missing front tooth, emanated an aura of danger. His very presence exuded a warning, "Don't mess with me or I'll cap you." It was a message I had taken to heart given my precarious situation. I cautiously engaged in conversation, attempting to keep the atmosphere as non-threatening as possible. After all, we were both in this together, trapped in the cold confines of the cell. If he was willing to talk, I was more than willing to listen. As the minutes stretched into hours, I felt the need to vent my frustrations about the unjust circumstances that had brought me here. My drunken state that fateful night had landed me in this mess, and I needed an outlet for my anger. My cellmate, surprisingly, appeared receptive to my words. Perhaps it was the shared experience of incarceration that had softened his demeanor. Or maybe he saw the genuine frustration in my eyes. During our conversation, I let slip some delicate information about myself. I divulged that I hailed from the nicer side of town, a neighborhood that stood in stark contrast to the gritty streets where we now found ourselves. I recounted the events of that ill-fated night, explaining how I had hosted friends at my parents' house while they were away, indulging in a pregame before heading to the club. Yet, despite my need to vent, I couldn't escape the gnawing discomfort of our confined space. My cellmate's constant chatter grated on my nerves, and the urge to escape into a restless slumber became overwhelming. Eventually, it seemed he sensed my growing annoyance and fell into an uneasy silence. The darkness of the cell enveloped us, broken only by the distant echoes of voices from other detainees in their own bouts of despair. Morning came, and with it the dreaded reality of facing the consequences of that tumultuous night. The courtroom beckoned a place where I would be judged for crimes I believed were nothing more than bogus charges. Before my cellmate and I could leave the cell's confines, I had the opportunity to catch a glimpse of the judge, a figure of authority who held my fate in their hands. As I observed the proceedings from the back of the courtroom, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The judge's stern expression did little to alleviate my concerns. I had been released, but the looming threat of future court dates weighed heavily on my mind, a constant reminder of the nightmare I had endured. That night, as I returned home, the windows of my house were wide open, allowing the sounds of the outside world to drift in. But amidst the ordinary noises of the night, there was something unsettling, a chorus of footsteps, multiple sets circling my house with eerie intent. Fear gripped me as I hurriedly moved through the house, shutting each window one by one on the first floor. My heart raced, and a cold sweat formed on my brow as I approached the backyard door, a sliding glass portal leading to the deck. Curiosity got the better of me, and I flicked on the deck light, briefly illuminating the area beyond. In that fleeting moment of light, two figures darted out from the illumination and vanished into the darkness. Recognition struck me like a bolt of lightning. One of those figures was unmistakably my former cellmate. How had he found me? What sinister motive had driven him to my home? With a sense of impending dread, I closed the blinds to the door and continued securing the remaining windows. It was clear that my earlier disclosures about my parents being away and the neighborhood I lived in had fueled his intentions. He must have seen an opportunity for an easy score. The minutes dragged on, each one filled with anxiety and paranoia. The night remained eerily silent, as though the world itself was holding its breath. I didn't hear from my uninvited visitors again, but the threat they had posed hung in the air like a lingering storm. I never breathed a word of these events to my parents. The truth of my arrest was something I had chosen to keep hidden, and now the near-home invasion by my former cellmate was another dark secret locked away in the recesses of my mind. As I lay in bed, the shadows of that night continued to haunt me. The question lingered: what would drive a man to pursue someone he had met in the depths of a jail cell? It was a question that had no easy answers, and one that would stay with me, a constant reminder of the inexplicable darkness that had touched my life. The room was shrouded in darkness as I lay there, my heart pounding in my chest. The events of the past few weeks had left me feeling disoriented and uncertain, and this latest incident had pushed me to the brink of terror. I had never considered myself a spiritual person, never put much stock in signs or omens. But what had transpired recently, beginning with Spencer's reappearance in my life, had shaken the very foundations of my beliefs. Spencer and I had crossed paths at a bar, a chance meeting that had sparked an unpredictable connection. At first, it had seemed like a serendipitous encounter, two souls drawn together by the whims of fate. But as our relationship had unfolded, it had revealed a darker underbelly. My family's initial indifference had evolved into skepticism, with my grandparents, particularly my grandmother, harboring deep reservations about Spencer. They claimed to see something in him, something ominous and unsettling, a darkness that lurked beneath his charming facade. I couldn't deny that our relationship had been tumultuous. Arguments had become a common occurrence, with Spencer's temper flaring easily. There had even been a night when I believed he might turn violent, but he had managed to rein in his anger at the last moment. It was that near miss that had prompted me to end things, or so I had thought. The news of my grandmother's sudden demise had sent shockwaves through her family. In the midst of grieving her loss, I had hung a framed picture of her on my bedroom wall, a small tribute to a woman who had played a significant role in my life. But it was what happened next that left me bewildered and terrified. In the weeks that followed, Spencer had reached out to me, and against my better judgment, I had agreed to see him again. Astonishingly, our time together had been peaceful, devoid of the strife and turmoil that had plagued our relationship before. Just a few days ago, we had taken a decisive step, officially becoming boyfriend and girlfriend. That night had passed without incident, and I had drifted into slumber, feeling an unusual sense of security in Spencer's presence. Yet, that fragile illusion of peace had shattered in the dead of night. A deafening crash had jolted me awake, and my room had been plunged into disorienting darkness. Panic had surged through me as I fumbled for the lamp's switch, and its soft glow had revealed the cause of the commotion. The framed picture of my beloved grandmother had fallen from the wall, its glass frame shattered on the floor. I had stared at the broken image, my heart in my throat, my mind struggling to comprehend the eerie symbolism of that moment. With trembling hands, I had picked up the shattered frame, a sense of dread washing over me. How could something like this happen? There had been no draft in the room, no logical explanation for the picture to come crashing down on the very night Spencer and I had made our commitment official. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than mere coincidence. It was as though an unseen force had interjected itself into my life, delivering a message that I couldn't decipher. The next day, I had mustered the courage to call Spencer and convey my decision, an amicable parting of ways, at least temporarily. But the response I had received had sent shivers down my spine. His anger had erupted like a tempest, his voice a venomous torrent of rage. It was a stark contrast to the calm demeanor he had exhibited in recent weeks. The transformation was unsettling, confirming the doubts that had been sown by my family, particularly my grandmother. As I hung up the phone, I was left with an unsettling realization. My grandmother had been right about Spencer all along. Her instincts, honed by years of experience and wisdom, had detected something malevolent in him. It was a chilling revelation, one that filled me with a profound sense of foreboding. But the unsettling events didn't end there. The image of my grandmother, forever etched in my mind, now bore a haunting connection to the night of her passing. It was as if her spirit had intervened, tearing down the picture in a desperate attempt to protect me from the clutches of a dangerous man. In the days that followed, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes followed my every move. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, whispers echoed in the corners of my room. The presence of something beyond the realm of the living had infiltrated my life, leaving me paralyzed with fear. I couldn't deny the chilling possibility that my grandmother, from beyond the veil of death, was still looking out for me. Her spirit had warned me of the darkness lurking in Spencer's heart, and now it seemed to linger, a protective force shielding me from harm. As I grappled with these inexplicable events, I couldn't help but wonder, what did my grandmother's spirit want from me? What message was she trying to convey through the shattered picture frame? I was caught in a web of uncertainty, trapped between the realm of the living and the mysteries of the afterlife. The line between reality and the supernatural had blurred, and I was left with more questions than answers. In the days to come, I would embark on a journey to unravel the enigma that had become my life, seeking the truth behind my grandmother's ominous premonitions and the inexplicable events that continued to unfold. The Colorado wilderness, with its rugged terrain and breathtaking vistas, had always held a magnetic allure for me. It was a place where I sought solace, a sanctuary away from the hustle and bustle of daily life. And so, on a crisp, starry night, I found myself embarking on an off-roading adventure deep into the heart of the Rocky Mountains. My trusty companion on this journey was my faithful Jeep, a rugged vehicle built for the very purpose of conquering untamed landscapes. Together, we had traversed countless trails, but on this particular evening, our destination was Dead Man's Road, a trail shrouded in both mystery and treacherous beauty. As I navigated the winding roads that led me to Red Feather Lakes, the anticipation of the adventure ahead coursed through my veins. The day had been spent conquering a series of challenging trails, the Jeep's tires gripping the earth with unwavering determination. Each obstacle had been met with triumph, fueling my confidence. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the landscape into a palette of dusky purples and fiery oranges. It was the perfect backdrop for my journey into the unknown. I had packed light, bringing only the essentials for survival and comfort. My sleeping bag lay folded in the back of the Jeep, a makeshift bed for the night ahead. As I ventured deeper into the wilderness, I couldn't help but revel in the solitude of the moment. The decision to embark on this adventure alone had been met with raised eyebrows and concerned glances from friends and family. They couldn't fathom my desire to embrace the wilderness solo, but for me, it was a cherished form of escapism. The term camping felt like an inadequate description of what I was about to experience. This was more than setting up a tent and building a fire. It was a communion with nature itself. Instead of canvas walls, the sturdy frame of my Jeep would be my shelter, offering a unique vantage point to witness the untamed world around me. As the day surrendered to night, I parked my Jeep a short distance from the trailhead. It was a calculated decision, driven by the slim chance that other night enthusiasts might traverse this remote terrain. I settled into my sleeping bag, my stomach content from a simple dinner of protein bars and snacks. The LED light bar mounted on my Jeep bathed the surroundings in an ethereal glow, warding off the oppressive darkness. Cocooned within my sleeping bag, comfort eluded me. The rugged terrain had no sympathy for my quest for repose. Yet, the discomfort was a small price to pay for the privilege of witnessing the sunrise in this pristine wilderness. With my eyes half closed, I listened to the sounds of the night. The wilderness was never truly silent. It hummed with life, a chorus of unseen creatures. And then it happened, the unexpected intrusion into my solitude. A voice, soft and distant, echoed through the woods, followed by a burst of laughter that shattered the serenity of the night. In the depths of the Red Feather Lakes Trail, the presence of another human being seemed inconceivable, especially at this ungodly hour. Intrigued and a touch apprehensive, I peered out of the Jeep's windows, searching for any signs of headlights or taillights. There was nothing, only the inky darkness that enveloped the forest. My sense of unease intensified. The voice, now clearer, carried the weight of gender ambiguity. It could have belonged to either a woman or a young boy. Fear began to creep in, its icy fingers clutching at my heart. Someone was out there, of that there was no doubt. Yet, their words remained unintelligible to me, lost in the night's embrace. I lay paralyzed, a silent observer of this eerie encounter. Time seemed to stretch, the minutes stretching into hours as I clung to the hope that this was nothing more than a figment of my imagination. Then, as if in response to my silent plea, the forest fell into an unsettling hush. The chorus of crickets ceased their nocturnal serenade. I strained to hear, my senses on high alert. And then it came, a voice, clear and haunting, as if whispered from the very heart of the wilderness. "Hello, I see you there." A shiver coursed through my body, every nerve electrified with terror. It was a voice I couldn't place, an enigmatic utterance that pierced the stillness of the night. I clung to my makeshift sanctuary, the driver's seat of my Jeep, immobilized by fear. My mind raced, struggling to make sense of the inexplicable. Who was out there, hidden in the shadows, watching me in the dead of night? The darkness beyond the windows held secrets I dared not fathom. In my mind, 1,000 scenarios played out, a sinister stranger, a lost soul, or perhaps something even more unfathomable. The voice offered no clues, its intention veiled in obscurity. Then it happened, a resounding impact against the rear windshield of my Jeep. I recoiled, my heart pounding in my chest, adrenaline surging through my veins. It was as though the very night had struck out at me, a single, ominous blow. With frantic desperation, I abandoned the sanctuary of the sleeping bag and hurled myself into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, and my tires bit into the rocky terrain as I sped down the trail, away from the unknown menace. My gaze darted to the rearview mirror, illuminated by the red glow of my taillights. But there was nothing, no pursuer, no phantom figure. Only the haunting memory of that voice and the inexplicable impact on my windshield. The nightmare of that night haunted my thoughts as I drove, exhaustion warring with fear. Mile after mile, I pushed on until I reached the refuge of a motel. The sterile comfort of the room offered a stark contrast to the wild uncertainty I had encountered. In the aftermath, questions swirled within me. What had transpired on Dead Man's Road? Was it a sinister encounter, a malicious prank, or something beyond the realm of rationality? Some had suggested the possibility of a stranded traveler seeking help, but in the depths of that darkened trail, reason seemed to have fled. In the end, I was left with a chilling truth, a reminder that the wilderness, while a sanctuary, could also harbor enigmatic forces that defied comprehension. It was a stark lesson in vigilance, a testament to the unpredictability of the world beyond our familiar borders. People, I realized, were capable of darkness, their intentions shrouded in mystery. In the solitude of the wilderness, where the boundaries of reality blurred, I had encountered the unknown, a presence that lingered in the recesses of my memory. As I reflected on that harrowing night, one thing remained clear: always trust your instincts, remain vigilant, and be attuned to the enigmatic whispers of the wild. In the end, it was a lesson etched into the very fabric of my being, a reminder that the untamed beauty of the Colorado wilderness concealed secrets that could leave an indelible mark on the soul. Life is a tapestry woven from threads of both the ordinary and the inexplicable. Among the many chapters that comprise our existence, some stand out as indelible enigmas, unexplainable events that leave an indelible mark on our psyche. This is one such chapter, a narrative of two unsettling encounters that defy reason and continue to haunt my memories. The first occurred within the confines of my own home, a place where familiarity should breed only comfort. I was ensconced in my room, diligently working on a history paper, the weight of academic deadlines pressing upon me. The day was unremarkable, and I believed myself to be alone until a voice shattered the illusion. From downstairs, my mother's voice pierced the silence, calling my name with a sense of urgency. Initially annoyed at the interruption, I responded, expecting a quick exchange that would allow me to return to my academic pursuits. However, silence greeted my reply, and my annoyance deepened. Intrigued yet vexed, I descended the stairs, my footsteps echoing through the quiet house. The voice had been unmistakably my mother's, yet as I reached the lower floor, she was nowhere in sight. A sense of disquiet settled over me. I called out for her again, and her voice, unchanged in tone and inflection, responded from the depths of the basement. It was a disconcerting echo of my name, each utterance identical, devoid of nuance or emotion. The basement, in contrast, was cloaked in darkness, an unsettling void. Despite my growing unease, I ventured closer to the basement door, determined to unravel this inexplicable riddle. The flickering basement light cast eerie shadows, and my heart quickened as I called for my mother once more. Her voice replied, unwavering, drawing me nearer to the enigmatic crawlspace closet. This peculiar closet, nestled in the basement's corner, was a place I had seldom ventured. Its unconventional design required a kind of awkward crawl to access, and it loomed as the sole remaining location where my mother could possibly be. In a final plea, I called for my mother, and the chilling silence that followed sent a shiver down my spine. In the inky darkness of the closet, I knelt, peering inside with trepidation. It was a void, impenetrable and disconcerting. "Mom, are you messing with me?" I ventured, a sense of dread gnawing at me. There was no response, only the muted hum of the basement light. With a surge of fear, I retreated, sprinting back upstairs and securing the basement door behind me. In that bewildering moment, I couldn't fathom the inexplicable. What force had mimicked my mother's voice with such precision, luring me into the shadows? I reached for the house phone, my trembling fingers dialing my mother's cell number. Her voice answered, dispelling my mounting fears, for she was out grocery shopping. It took considerable persuasion to convince my mother of the strange encounter I had just experienced. She dismissed it as a product of my imagination, attributing it to a child's overactive mind. Yet, the memory of that uncanny episode lingered, a chilling reminder of the unexplained. The second chapter of my inexplicable encounters unfolded during a stormy weekend at my grandmother's house. I was a mere 9 years old, a frequent guest at her home during my childhood. On this particular day, as tempestuous rain battered the windows, I found myself engrossed in the world of SpongeBob SquarePants. The ringing telephone cut through the animated world on the screen. Common sense dictated that I, a child, should not answer the phone, but youthful curiosity propelled me to the kitchen. I picked up the receiver and, in my childlike innocence, uttered a tentative hello. The voice on the other end, belonging to a stranger, immediately inquired about the presence of an adult in the house. In response to my admission that I was alone, a palpable unease began to settle within me. The stranger's questions continued, probing about the accuracy of the address he had on file. I hesitated to respond, intuition warning me of potential danger. Instead, I hung up the phone, my apprehension mounting. As the minutes ticked by, an ominous pounding resonated from the front door. The cries for help, accompanied by frantic knocking, reverberated through the house. I muted the television, my young heart pounding in my chest. I approached the front door cautiously, peering through the small glass window at the top. My gaze met that of a man standing on the other side, his distress evident. His pleas for assistance tugged at my empathy. Fear gripped me, and I retreated, concealing myself behind the living room couch. There were no cell phones in those days, and I couldn't call my grandmother, my only lifeline. The man's knocks grew more persistent, his cries for help transitioning from desperation to annoyance. In a chilling turn of events, the man redirected his efforts to the window near my hiding place. His words, laced with an eerie reassurance, seeped through the glass as he implored, "I'm not going to hurt you. Please, I'm bleeding badly." Tears welled in my eyes as I remained hidden, paralyzed by fear. The relentless pounding ceased, and I heard the man's footsteps receding. Still, I dared not emerge from my refuge. Time stretched agonizingly, and the storm outside provided an oddly soothing backdrop to my terror. Eventually, I dared to move, escaping to my grandmother's room and barricading the door. Under the covers, I sought solace, my young mind grappling with the ordeal I had just endured. When my grandmother returned, I rushed into her embrace, tears streaming down my face as I recounted the harrowing encounter. The police were called, and I provided them with every detail I could recall. Yet, the man who had terrorized me that stormy afternoon remained at large, his identity and motives shrouded in mystery. My grandmother chose not to inform my parents of the incident, shielding them from the grim reality I had faced. In the aftermath, my grandmother's protective instincts kicked into high gear, and I was never left alone during my visits. The chapter of that unsettling day marked a pivotal moment in my young life, a stark reminder of the vulnerability that can lurk behind unlocked doors. In both of these inexplicable encounters, the boundaries of reality blurred, leaving me with lingering questions and a deep-seated sense of caution. Life's enigmas, like shadows in the night, often defy explanation, but they serve as potent reminders of the unpredictable nature of our existence. Life often unfolds in the most unpredictable ways, punctuated by moments that etch themselves into our memory. This chapter recounts an unsettling incident, one that unfolded within the walls of my home, shaking the foundation of my sense of security as a father. I am the proud father of 2 children, aged 15 and 10, and at the time of this occurrence, my wife was away from home. It was a typical day, and I found myself in need of a midday nap. The sun streamed through the window as I settled into my room, hoping to steal a moment of respite. My older son, a teenager with an active social life, often came and went with his friends throughout the day. The rhythmic opening and closing of the front door had become a familiar background noise. However, when the storm door slammed shut for the 4th time, irritation began to brew within me. I whistled loudly, a gesture aimed at urging my older son to keep the noise to a minimum. What I assumed to be his comings and goings had disrupted my nap, and I longed for some tranquility. Yet, my irritation deepened as I detected other clamorous noises echoing from the hallway emanating from the direction of my younger son Keith's room. I imagined that he was engrossed in play, perhaps with his wrestling toys. The cacophony persisted, growing increasingly intrusive. A relentless thumping sound, like an insistent drumbeat, reached my ears. My curiosity piqued, and despite my initial reluctance, I felt compelled to investigate. Crossing the hall to Keith's room, I followed the source of the unsettling noise. As I entered his room, I was met not by the sight of my son at play, but by a disconcerting tableau. The door stood ajar, revealing a scene of horror that seared itself into my memory. My anger gave way to shock and dread. Before me was not my son, but a grown man, his back turned to me as he relentlessly banged his head against the wall. The wall bore gruesome evidence of his frenzied actions, streaked with the grotesque residue of his own blood. The man's head gave a slight tilt, just enough to grant me a chilling side glance. Panic surged through me as I grappled with the inconceivable. I lunged at the intruder, tackling him to the floor, my heart pounding in my chest. It was then that Keith, hidden beneath his sheets, emerged, his wide eyes reflecting the terror of the situation. The man did not resist. Instead, he commenced a disconcerting tirade of nonsensical words, a chilling testament to his fractured sanity. Instructing Keith to retrieve the house phone, I maintained my hold on the intruder, wary of his unpredictable behavior. The call to the police was made, and I found myself locked in a surreal standoff for what felt like an interminable 5 minutes before their arrival. Throughout the agonizing wait, the intruder continued to smile eerily, punctuating his unsettling demeanor with bouts of manic laughter and incomprehensible utterances. It became increasingly apparent that the man was either grappling with severe mental illness or under the influence of potent substances, or perhaps a harrowing combination of both. When the authorities arrived, they swiftly took control of the situation, apprehending the intruder. My decision not to press charges stemmed from a deep sense of empathy and concern for his well-being. It was clear that he needed professional help, a lifeline to pull him from the abyss of his troubled existence and remove him from the perilous streets. This chapter in my life serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of our daily routines and the unpredictability of human behavior. In the sanctity of my home, I encountered an intrusion that defied all logic, leaving an indelible mark on my family's collective consciousness. It is a testament to the compassion and resilience required when confronted with the unexplainable, as well as a stark illustration of the profound impact a single chapter can have on the narrative of our lives. Sleep, an essential and often elusive realm of our lives, is meant to be a sanctuary, a time of rest and restoration. Yet for some, it transforms into a realm of terror, a place where the mind plays dark tricks. In this chapter, I delve into my journey through the haunting world of night terrors and sleep disorders, a realm where reality blurs with the surreal. Throughout my life, I have been plagued by night terrors, those harrowing episodes that jolt us awake, heart racing and mind entangled in a web of fear. Sleep disorders, it seems, have made a permanent home in my nights. Among them, sleep paralysis stands out as a particularly disturbing ordeal. I've lost count of the number of times I've found myself trapped in the chilling grip of sleep paralysis. It's a truly unsettling experience, one that defies logic and leaves you feeling utterly powerless. In those moments, I often yearn for the simplest of movements, just to wiggle a finger, to break free from the invisible chains that bind me. But sleep, in its relentless cruelty, denies me even that. Then there are the hallucinations, as vivid and real as waking life. I've awakened to see spiders and other monstrous insects crawling in my bed, their grotesque forms taunting my senses. But as I muster the courage to confront these nightmarish apparitions, they vanish like smoke, leaving behind nothing but the remnants of my own fear. But it's the recurring nightmares that cast the darkest shadow over my nights. They are relentless, unyielding in their torment. Each night, it seems, they take on a new form, a new horror to haunt my sleep. In the inky depths of my subconscious, they play out scenarios that defy reason and terrify the soul. One particularly memorable episode occurred during a week of extreme stress at school. The weight of impending assignments and deadlines bore down on me, both mentally and physically drained. With half of my assignments due the next day, I toiled late into the night, the clock ticking relentlessly towards the dawn. When I finally completed the last of my assignments, I fell into bed, utterly spent. Exhaustion overcame me, and I drifted into sleep faster than memory could grasp. That night, a particularly sinister dream unfolded, leaving me bewildered and shaken. In this bizarre dream, I found myself in a never-ending, linear building, each room a surreal tableau. Inexplicably, I encountered candies in each room, as though I had stumbled into a Halloween attraction. But the dream was no playful holiday adventure. I was running from an unseen malevolence, an entity that laughed with the eerie innocence of a child, its laughter echoing from every corner of my mind. My journey through this disorienting maze reached its climax when I reached what seemed to be the final door of the building. The laughter crescendoed to a deafening cacophony. As I turned the doorknob and stepped through, I abruptly awoke in my bed. The crushing weight of sleep paralysis bore down on me, rendering me immobile. Panic set in as the laughter from my dream echoed in the room. My gaze was drawn to the center where 4 figures materialized like specters from the depths of my subconscious. A family, they appeared, a tall man and woman accompanied by a small boy and girl. They stood there, hand in hand, their faces twisted into impossibly wide grins that seemed to defy the limits of human anatomy. Their laughter reverberated, a chorus of deranged mirth. A suffocating pressure gripped my chest, a hallmark of sleep paralysis. As if defying the laws of space, they seemed to grow closer, or perhaps they were expanding, encroaching upon me. My body, finally released from its frozen state, erupted into action. Sheets were thrown aside, pillows hurled into the room, and my voice unleashed a primal scream. But as my eyes darted around the room, I was met with the inexplicable absence of the nightmarish family. The haunting laughter dissolved into the void, leaving me shaken and bewildered. That hallucination was unlike any other I had experienced in my recurrent episodes of sleep paralysis. It marked a turning point, a harbinger of a deeper disturbance within me. I knew I couldn't let these night terrors continue to rule my nights and my sanity. The following day, I sought solace in the office of my doctor, who, with empathy and understanding, prescribed new medications to help mitigate these nocturnal horrors. Since then, I have had my share of night terrors, but nothing approaching the malevolent intensity of that particular episode. As I navigate the labyrinthine landscape of my subconscious, I am reminded that sleep is a realm where the boundaries between reality and imagination blur, where the mind, in its vulnerability, confronts its darkest fears. Nightmares and sleep disorders continue to haunt my nights, but they no longer hold me captive as they once did. They have become a testament to the resilience of the human mind, an enduring reminder that even in our most vulnerable moments, we can find the strength to confront the shadows that lurk within us. In the dimly lit apartment, my heart raced like a runaway train as the police officers hurriedly retreated. They left me with a solemn directive: give us a call if he showed up. But I couldn't fathom staying in that apartment for another second. It had become a sanctuary of secrets and betrayal, a place where trust had crumbled like old plaster. What's truly crazy is that I've never spoken to him since that fateful day. The moment they pulled him away in handcuffs, I severed all ties, blocking him on every conceivable platform. The very next day, I packed up my life, breaking the month-to-month lease that had seemed so convenient until then. Ryan had become a haunting specter, and I wanted to rid myself of his chilling presence. As I left that apartment, I couldn't help but wonder where Ryan had disappeared to. Rumors circulated in our small town that he had gone missing, but I couldn't summon an ounce of concern. In all honesty, he deserved whatever darkness fate had in store for him. He had become the embodiment of malevolence, deserving every iota of retribution that the universe could muster. In my heart, I felt a strange mixture of relief and guilt. I was grateful that I had barged into Ryan's room when I did, for what if I hadn't? What if I had never discovered the malevolence he harbored while sharing those very walls? What if he had tried to kill me too, his lifelong friend? They promptly issued a warrant for Ryan's arrest, a legal reckoning he couldn't escape. I hoped they would apprehend him swiftly. Justice needed to be served. After all, it's a stark reminder that we never truly know someone, even those who have walked beside us throughout our lives. Ryan and I were inseparable from our first grade adventures to navigating the labyrinth of senior year. It bewilders me to think back on everything even now. The memories were tainted by the revelation of his sinister side, and it's hard to reconcile the Ryan I knew with the malevolence he was capable of. His mind had become a sinister, twisted labyrinth of darkness, a place I had never imagined he would venture. In the end, the experience taught me that behind every familiar face, there may be hidden shadows lurking in the recesses of their soul. It's a stark reminder that human nature is a complex tapestry of light and darkness, and we can never fully fathom the depths of another person's psyche. As I reflect on that tumultuous chapter of my life, I'm reminded of the fragile nature of trust and the boundless capacity for darkness that resides within us all. Ryan's descent into malevolence serves as a haunting metaphor, a cautionary tale that urges us to peel back the layers and truly know the people we invite into our lives. It's a lesson etched into my soul, a reminder that even the closest friendships can harbor the most chilling secrets. In the end, I had to confront the unsettling truth that Ryan was not the person I thought he was. His descent into darkness serves as a stark reminder that beneath the facade of familiarity, a world of shadows may lurk. It's a lesson I carry with me, a constant reminder to be vigilant and never take the people in our lives for granted. As I close this chapter of my life, I do so with a heavy heart, haunted by the enigma of Ryan's transformation. But I also carry with me the wisdom that comes from navigating the darkest corners of human nature. It's a wisdom that reminds me to be cautious, to look beyond the surface, and to never underestimate the capacity for darkness that resides within us all. It was one of those days when I had a tight schedule, working at one of my 2 jobs. I had about 30 minutes before my shift, so I decided to head to the large mall restroom near my store. My plan was simple: freshen up, do my hair, touch up my makeup, and take a quick bathroom break. The mall itself had a unique history. It stood on land leased from a Native American tribe nestled in a California mountain pass that had seen its share of battles, once served as a stagecoach route, and witnessed countless vehicles passing through. Unfortunately, it was also known as a dumping site for bodies over the years. Legend even had it that a nearby county regularly dropped off buses of homeless individuals about a mile from the mall, leaving them to wander the streets with their belongings. It was a place of stark contrasts, with its desert beauty and harsh weather during storms. The mall had its own casino, but like many places, it had also been affected by the financial crisis, leaving parts of it run down. As I entered the restroom, my mind couldn't help but dwell on the strange stories that surrounded this place. A little did I know that I was about to experience something beyond the ordinary. The restroom was quite busy that day. 2 women and a child occupied the first row of stalls. The child seemed restless, bouncing around, while the women's loud conversations irritated me. So I chose to walk to the row of stalls on the far side of the restroom, assuming they'd be cleaner and less frequently used. I entered the 4th or 5th stall, but something peculiar was happening. The back of my head tingled, a sensation that usually signaled an impending experience I couldn't quite explain. However, I was in a hurry to use the restroom, so I brushed it off, attributing it to my imagination. I opened the door to stall number 4, and that's when I saw her, a young woman sitting on the toilet, fully dressed. She appeared to be in her late teens or early 20s, but there was something profoundly odd about her. She was two-dimensional, like a paper doll folded at the hips, her body facing down over her thighs. Her legs were paper-thin, flattened, and folded down to the floor in front of her. She was transparent, as if she existed in 2 dimensions simultaneously, and I could see through her, both her front and back. In an instant, I understood she was no ordinary person. She projected herself as a paper doll, and it was clear that something was terribly wrong. She communicated with me, and I could feel her sickness, the nausea, the throbbing headache, and the effects of being high. She had vomited on herself, and the stench filled the air. I felt her nausea, that disorienting hangover, the vertigo. It was so overpowering that I feared I might vomit myself. Her appearance was equally unsettling. She wore faded, ripped blue jeans and a white or cream halter top with tiny blue designs. Her blonde hair was long, dirty, and stringy, cascading untidily. Dust covered her arms, and she was painfully thin, her hip bones and shoulder blades protruding from her body. She looked bruised, and her face bore the marks of self-inflicted blemishes. In her past life, she must have been very pretty, but the torment had taken its toll. Track marks marred her arms, and dark circles lingered beneath her eyes. She wasn't particularly pleasant, and in my initial shock and irritation, I thought, come on, I have to pee. Why did you do this to me? In those 15 or 30 seconds that I stood there holding the stall door opens, I learned her tragic story. She had been with two men, getting high in a car, and had overdosed on heroin. Panic had set in, and they had driven out onto a dark road, dumping her body into the desert. Those men, the ones she thought were her friends, had planned to get her high enough to make her unconscious so they could do unspeakable things to her. She showed me a random portion of the desert, a location near the mall. I was stunned, and without thinking, I moved down 3 stalls to finally relieve myself. I told her not to follow me, but she did. She stood outside my stall, becoming more three-dimensional as I peed, her hair hanging down over her soiled clothes, her dirty feet and chipped toenail polish peeking out of her sandals. I couldn't ignore her any longer. I sighed and asked, "Okay, I see you. What do you want?" She whispered back, "I don't want someone to know." And just like that, she vanished. Due to her attire, I had a vague sense that she had died in the 70s. I audibly expressed my apology and ignored the inquisitive stare of a mother who was nearby washing her hands with her child. As I finished cleaning up and prepared to head to work, I couldn't shake the strange encounter. Months passed and I saw her only twice more. Each time I returned and tried to guide her to cross over to the other side, but I didn't sense that she was ready. She wasn't even sure if she was dead or still caught in a bad trip. Our conversations happened telepathically, which was unusual, especially in a public restroom. My desire to help her persisted. In the future, I plan to take a novel, sit on a bench outside near that hallway, and invite her to sit and talk while pretending to read. I'll listen to her story, and perhaps, if she's ready, help her find peace. This bizarre restroom encounter opened up a world of questions for me. Why was she trapped there, reliving the last hours of her life? I started researching records for that time period in that location, and I even took a walk in the fields close to the mountain where I believe her body was abandoned. But I found nothing. The Californian deserts have a grim history of people disappearing, never to be found again. I hold a belief that spirits draw energy from the emotions of the living, the rush of people in and out of that restroom, the flow of running water. They watch shoppers and people passing by, gathering energy from the living. I've tried to put up defenses in public restrooms after this experience. It's a personal journey, and I'm still searching for concrete proof. I know it's too late to find her body, but I plan to delve into old missing person cases next. If anyone has a good resource or suggestions, I would greatly appreciate it. Back in my late teens, my cousin and I found ourselves alone in my house. Our parents had gone out of town, leaving us to our own devices. We were both completely sober, each engrossed in our respective activities. He in the living room, watching television, and I in my parents' bedroom, also engrossed in TV. We were separated by more than just walls. A narrow hallway served as the only connection between our two worlds. That hallway led to the bathroom and 2 other bedrooms, creating a labyrinth of sorts within our own home. It was just an ordinary evening, or so we thought, until something extraordinary unfolded. Out of nowhere, I felt compelled to look up from my TV screen. A strange sensation had overcome me. It was as though an invisible force had tugged at my consciousness, urging me to pay attention. And then it happened. A ball of light, approximately 2 to 3 feet wide, materialized before my eyes. It floated gracefully from one bedroom, traversing the hallway, and settled into the other bedroom. The strangest part was its appearance, dark black right at its core, yet surrounded by a mesmerizing aura of light. It glided effortlessly, hovering about 3 to 4 feet above the floor. As I watched this enigmatic spectacle, my cousin, startled and wide-eyed, bolted into the hallway. He peeked around the corner, his face etched with fear. It was a sight that will forever be etched in my memory, his scared expression, eyes filled with astonishment and trepidation. Before I could utter a word, he blurted out, "Did you see that?" I was taken aback, not just by the surreal experience, but by his question. I asked him what he saw, curious to understand if he had witnessed the same inexplicable phenomenon. His response left me dumbfounded. He recounted how he had observed an old man gradually making his way from one bedroom, passing through the hallway and vanishing into the other bedroom. In the aftermath of his revelation, we hurriedly switched on the light in the bedroom where the old man had seemingly gone. We combed every inch of the room, but there was nothing to be found. It was as though the room had never hosted any other presence. What struck us both was the disparity in our observations. We had both witnessed something traversing from one room through the hallway and into the same bedroom, yet our accounts were wildly different. While I saw a luminous ball of light, he saw an elderly man with no discernible legs. It was perplexing. We were in separate rooms, unable to see each other, and yet we both agreed on the path this inexplicable entity had taken within the confines of our house. Moreover, we had seen it simultaneously, a shared experience etched into our memory. I should note that the entity had traveled from my sister's bedroom to my own. This was a house I had grown up in, and over the years I had encountered numerous inexplicable occurrences. Small things mostly. Doorbells would ring at odd hours, lights flickered, and appliances occasionally malfunctioned. These incidents could be rationalized as mere technical glitches, nothing more. But one particular phenomenon stood out. Late at night, I would sometimes hear a single knock on the wall of my bedroom, a sound coming from the adjacent room. It was easy to dismiss it as the house settling, the creaks and groans that homes often make. What made this knock peculiar was its consistency. It happened at irregular intervals, always late at night, and always just a single, solitary knock. Curiosity eventually got the best of me. When I was about 14 years old, I decided to respond. I knocked back once, twice. To my astonishment, the entity, or whatever it was, replied with another set of knocks, two in return for my two. The realization sent shivers down my spine. Undeterred, I ventured further. I turned on all the lights in the back room that shared the wall with my bedroom. With a mix of apprehension and determination, I called out, inviting whatever was responsible for this eerie communication to reveal itself. I searched every nook and cranny, but there was no sign of a physical presence. That night marked a turning point. It left me with more questions than answers. 15 years have passed since then, and I'm still haunted by those unexplained events from my late teens. The experience with my cousin, the inexplicable knocks, and the shadowy figures, they linger in my memory, urging me to delve deeper into the mysteries that surrounded me. As I recount these stories, I hope to unlock the secrets hidden within the walls of my past and find the answers I've been seeking for so long.